Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Boardmasters with me, Chris Mullins. And today I wanted to sort of expand on something that came up during my top 10 anticipated games of 2022 video, which I uploaded last week. And basically, just a recap for anyone that didn't watch that, it's sort of something that occurred to me over the course of the 2 to 3 weeks that I was doing the list, because I started formulating it around Christmas and two games in particular. So Return to Dark Tower, I think initially was at number 2. Townsville Strutt, I think was number 4. And then in the 2 to 3 weeks since I started putting the list together, between then and recording, they both slipped down, I think, to 8th and 7th on the list respectively. And on the other side of that coin, Bard Sun, which was, I think, 9th on my list, rocketed up to the top 3, I believe. I think it got into 3rd. I may be wrong, because I recorded it last week. I think it was in the top 3. But anyway, and the reason for that is obviously the different shipping situations of the games. And I thought it was quite an interesting psychological anomaly, really. Maybe it's just with me, maybe it's wider, and that's the kind of thing I wanted to sort of explore. This isn't me breaking down the psychological aspects and what causes it and how to deal with it, because I'm in no way qualified to do that. It's just me exploring my feelings as much as anything and just seeing how the community responds and feels, and if they share it or quite the opposite, really. And yeah, basically I found it quite interesting that both Return to Dark Tower and Townsville Strutt have had shipping issues, particularly for myself as a UK backer. So Return to Dark Tower, it started shipping in the US, has fulfilled a lot of the base games, and the bigger pledges should be fulfilling in the next 5 to 6 weeks, which is excellent. I am not jealous at all. But for the UK, we've had a bit of a mixed bag in that Restoration Games released a update in mid-December, and on their freight tracking sheet, it basically had a dispatch date for the ship as the 30th of December, which obviously had me very, very excited and expecting the game potentially in March sometime, maybe even a little bit earlier, depending on how quick the ship was. And then that date passed, and there was nothing for a few days, and basically it turned out that date wasn't a book ship. It was a sort of placeholder date, because they guessed or they assumed that they would probably have a ship booked for that date, which is a bit of a strange way of doing things, if in my opinion, because all it does is leads to expectations such as mine being raised and then having to be shattered a matter of days later, when the status of the shipping was then changed merely to working and they were trying to book a ship. 10-12 days later, we're now on the 15th when I'm recording this, they released an update a day or two ago saying that EU shipping was now moved to working as opposed to on hold, and UK was still at working, and they were doing what they can to book a ship. And that is pretty demoralizing when 3 weeks ago you were expecting the ship to be halfway to the UK by now, and now we're at a point where the ship hasn't been booked. There's been no indication. Obviously they can't give out too much info, that they can't keep us up to date on the minutiae of the talks with the fulfillment centers. But it's hard to think, there hasn't been any movement. They've been trying to book a UK ship for 4 to 6 weeks with no luck. What's to say it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks? And if it doesn't, then you've got Chinese New Year, which is going to push everything back 2, 3, 4 weeks then. So then if it's not shipped until after Chinese New Year, we're looking probably at the earliest May, which is sad. I mean, it's depressing, especially when, our friends across the pond, you'll have your games long before then. And, there were rumors. There was, I think, a listing on Amazon.com of the retail edition of Return to Dark Tower hitting or being released on Amazon in March. And, I'm sure that was just a placeholder. I would not get too worked up about that in advance, because Amazon just have a habit of putting placeholders on pre-orders, and I don't think the listing is there anymore. So I think that has been taken down, which suggests that it probably wasn't, well, either it wasn't right or it was right and they saw that the community was a bit annoyed about it, so they took it down. I'm hoping it's not the latter, because I have no issue with different regions getting the game at different times. It's not some strange conspiracy where they only care about their US backers. I don't have an issue with retailers who back the Kickstarter campaign getting their games and putting them on the shelves for people to buy. That doesn't bother me in the slightest. That's they back the campaign. They've got every right to do that, just as every private backer has. Anyone who's bought the game and has had their edition turn up could turn around and sell it, and that's their prerogative. It's not something to get worked up about. But if it does hit mass retail, even though it's not in my region, if it does hit mass retail in the US in March, that will be a bit of a slap in the face, because if they've got that amount of stock in the US that they're able to go to mass retail before other regions have even had their campaigns, that is a pretty shoddy way of organising the shipping, in my opinion. I mean, you can ship from the US to the UK or the US to the EU. So if they've got that excess stock, why aren't they booking a ship from the US to the UK or the EU? That may well be easier than booking a ship from China to the UK. And that's the other game on the list, Townsville Tussle. That is exactly what they had to do, because unfortunately for Panic Roll, no issues on their side, but there was a shipping issue from the warehouse, and basically all of their stock got shipped from China to the US, and then they had to freight it from the US to the EU, and then from there separately to the UK. So I'm still hoping that is going to be here by the end of January, but not really sure. It's just fingers crossed. We haven't had any definitive sort of information on that. But I just think it's interesting that these games are close to arriving, even though they may be imminent in the next couple of days, in the grand scheme of campaigns and Kickstarters that can run for 12 months to 2, 3, 4 years. A game being 3 or 4 months away is something to be quite excited about. And in October, November time, I was super excited for both of these games before they'd even announced they were at the point of shipping. So why is it that even though they're close, the fact that they're now delayed has kind of got me feeling a bit meh about the whole thing? It's like, okay, I'll happily get the game when they're here, but it's not something I'm particularly excited about in advance. I mean, isn't this kind of the opposite of what's supposed to happen with FOMO? This time when the games are starting to hit people's tables and they're all over social media and the buzz is there, and it's at the BGG hotness track with, I know Townsville Tussle's been near the top of that for a few weeks. Isn't this the time when we're supposed to be hit with the FOMO and devastated that we haven't got the game on the table? And this is where people spend obnoxious amounts of money buying a copy that for well above the value just because they can't cope with not having the game. It's why scalpers were completely justified in what they did with the PS5s, because people couldn't control themselves and couldn't wait. Is it the difference that I know I've got a copy coming, so FOMO's not going to hit me that way, and that is just accepting and just feeling a bit down about it all, and just, okay, yeah, can't wait to play the games, but I'm nowhere near as excited as I was? Is it just me that has that sort of reaction? Are most people angry in the EU UK backers, angry that they're being delayed so significantly? Are you still super excited and the delays don't bother you at all? Or are you like me, kind of nonplussed, and your enthusiasm for the game is kind of dulled a bit because of it, but you still happily get the game when it arrives? Whereas Bardson, who out of the blue released an update saying their games are ready to ship, they should, similar issue to Restoration Games with their estimated departure date, but they should be on a ship by January the 31st, meaning we could have the games in March, April time, which on a campaign that was initially slated to fulfill in May 2022 in the current climate, a campaign of that size arriving on time, let alone early, is pretty extraordinary. So I'm super excited for a game now that will still probably arrive after the two that I'm not so excited about, just because it's gone the other way on the shipping. It's kind of like, I'm super excited by Bard Sun because I've had that dopamine hit of that unexpected surprise of it's coming earlier, and the other two has gone kind of the other way, and that I don't know what the opposite to a dopamine hit is dysphoria or something like that, where you just feel a bit flat and everything about it. And it's just kind of interested me in this last couple of weeks where I've been thinking about the top 10 and the way that those games have flipped around in my hype list as much as anything. In that, even though the games Townsville Tussle in particular is going to be one of the next ones that arrive with me, I'm still more excited about Bard Sun that is 3 or 4 months away, purely because it's earlier than I expected, whilst Townsville Tussle is later than expected, even though it's going to arrive beforehand. And I just wanted to kind of talk about it and share it and see what everyone's opinions are, because it's a strange thing, and it goes very much against my understanding of FOMO up to this point. Because as far as I was aware, this point, while I was seeing everyone unboxing Townsville Tussle and Return to Dark Tower and having it on their table, this was the time when I was supposed to be chomping at the bit to get my copy and be filled with envy and jealousy. And I mean, I'm sure there are some people who are probably trying to buy another person's copy, and then with the plan of selling theirs when it finally arrives, and being that desperate to get the game to the table. And yet for me, it's just, all right, okay, it'll get here when it gets here. I wish it was going to be quicker, and it is a bit depressing, but it is what it is. So, let me know what you think. Comment down below and let's have a discussion about it. Is it just me being weird? Because I know that is more than likely given my psychology. But yeah, that is it for this video. I'm kind of talking about the psychology of shipping and things like that. So thank you for watching. Look after yourself, stay safe, and have a good one. Bye-bye now.